welcome back to Mish Mash Men Podcast, or M Cubed. I'm Dustin Labar, and today I'm here with my co-host to my left, Mr. Adam Mauser.
How do you do?
Last week, we talked a little bit about groupthink, which Adam did a great job. I hope everybody liked it. Good job on that, Adam.
Thank you.
Hopefully by now you've already gone to our link tree and gone to Charlie Mike Apparel and got our shirts. And if you haven't done it, you better do it quick.
Yeah. Supplies are limited.
They are very limited. So you might want to buy them for your family for Christmas or birthdays and just stockpile them for the future.
Operators are standing by. You want to be as cool as Dusty and I are with these shirts. I mean, look at them.
They're pretty fun shirts.
Yeah. I get asked all the time. So I just got back from a trip to Myrtle Beach.
Right.
Took four of the kids. My wife and I took four of the kids, and we stayed at a resort. Had an absolutely just wonderful time. And I got several severe compliments.
Oh,
on the
they
shirt.
were severe.
Yes, they were severe compliments. Like, hey, I really like that shirt. Now, these were all salespeople.
Yeah.
But that's immaterial.
Yeah, they still liked them. They wouldn't have mentioned it.
They loved them.
Yeah, they loved them. So get those shirts. Today, I'm hoping we're going to have a nice discussion on augmented reality, AR, and also virtual reality, VR. And the reason I'll just say the reason that this prompted is, did you hear about Apple coming out with their headset?
I did. I haven't looked too much into it, so tell me more about it.
Have you heard how much it is first?
It's probably, what, $1,000?
It is $3,500.
Okay.
So the reason it's very interesting is, you've seen my Oculus.
I have.
Have you used the Oculus?
I have not used it.
Okay. So you're familiar with how it works. So you put the thing on, you're in virtual reality, you have joysticks. It's like a video game.
Right.
Apple has come up with a way that you don't have any controllers. So it's augmented reality and virtual reality.
Yeah.
So you put the headset on, the screen will come up. You could touch it, picks up your hands. So like if you're, it picks up the motion of your hands, so you don't need any controllers.
I figured they would do a pretty good job of.
Yeah. So I haven't obviously seen it. They showed like a little video clip of it and some of the capabilities. It's going to be pretty crazy, but a lot of talk lately has been about AR and VR. So just a lot in general, because it's kind of like the next step in video games have kind of broken into it. Like video games are the reason. But I think it's you're seeing people use it for other reasons besides video games, which we'll talk about. I'll just really quick tell you what the difference between AR and VR is.
That'd be great.
So AR uses real world settings, while VR is completely virtual.
Okay.
AR users can control their presence in the real world, and I'll give you an example of that in a second. VR users are controlled by the system. VR requires a headset device, but AR can be accessed with a smartphone. AR enhances both the virtual and real world, while VR only enhances a fictional reality. So that's why that's important.
Okay. So one augments actual reality.
Yeah. So
one is virtual.
A really good example, were you familiar with that Pokemon Go game?
I was,
on your phone?
I never did it, but
so basically,
it probably comes as a shock.
I'm not surprised. I never played it either, but this was an example somebody gave me.
Yeah.
I just did it again.
Yeah.
My God, I'm a nightmare. Anyway, so the Pokemon Go, you were on your phone looking through your camera, and it looked exactly. It's the world. It's what's going on.
The actual image.
But a Pokemon would show up, and you interact with that Pokemon, so it's augmented the reality.
Yeah.
So you're in reality, but then they're dropping in things that make that augment that reality. And if you haven't done like a virtual reality, you're putting it, on, and you're immersed in this unreal world,
fake world,
fake world, correct? So like it's a game and it's cool. Like VR is cool. Like I have that game. You get like it's like you feel like you're in it, but you know that it's fake.
Right.
So ultimately, the fear is that how good is it going to get? That's the fear with virtual reality. Like, is it so good that people don't want to like exist in the real world because you can make the virtual world so much better? So, Facebook came out, or Meta came out with their metaverse.
Is it the same thing as Apple, or is it?
It's different. Well, metaverse is like this virtual world.
Mm-hmm.
So Apple is like more, I guess from my understanding, I'm sure it has virtual reality games, but it's augmented reality. So you can like pull up your apps just like your iPhone, but you're touching them in your room. Like it's like, like if you watch like the Avengers movies where they're pulling like computer screens up and stretching them out and like clicking and interacting with these fake screens.
Right.
That's like basically what it is.
Okay.
I don't know how the games work yet. But the metaverse was like, oh, if you have our VR headset, you can exist in the metaverse and you can do whatever you need to do. But it didn't succeed very well. And a lot of the feedback was it looked too fake. So you didn't look like a real person. You look like a fake person.
Yeah.
So that means that people that are using it want the virtual reality to be basically as real as it feels real, but they can be whatever they want to be. So if you want to be a lion, you could be a lion, but it feels like you're a lion.
That's interesting because have you ever heard of Uncanny Valley?
Yeah, I have. I don't know what it is, though. I've
So,
heard of that.
There is a valley that traditionally, I don't know if it might be changing now, apparently, from what you're saying. It could be changing, but it could be, in this instance, this instantiation, if you will. There is a different
Nice.
hat tip to Andrew who confuses words, but that's okay.
Yeah. Instantiation.
So in this instance, it could be a little bit different where people want to make that valley narrower. So Uncanny Valley is when people watch a movie and there are computer-generated images of people. Let's say, what was that, Polar Express.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just did not like Polar Express because the computer-generated images were close, and they were really close to what a real person would look like, but it kind of gave people the creeps.
Yeah.
Similarly, Toy Story, the people in there were kind of cartoonish.
Right.
They weren't that close to what a real person looks like.
Right.
It's because they didn't want to get into Uncanny Valley, because the closer you get to the way a person looks, it gives people the creeps.
Yeah.
And it makes them uncomfortable watching because they know it's fake.
Right.
And we're talking about watching a movie, and that's different than virtual reality altogether. So people might be hungrier for, and that valley might be a little bit more narrow, where they're willing to accept something that looks a lot more realistic, especially when you're talking about, other aspects of virtual reality.
Yeah. I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. That I've heard of that before, so that makes sense, because it did creep people out that it was like it's almost too close. I don't like it. But yeah, now people want it to be as real as possible in the game, especially in the game. They want it to be like, you feel like you're doing this, or you actually feel like you're doing this. Which have you played virtual reality? Have you done anything virtual?
I have not, other than flight simulation, for training.
Which is virtual reality.
Is virtual reality. And in some cases, it's kind of augmented because you have real cockpit controls, but then the screens are all fake.
Yeah.
The motion is obviously fake. So I've done some work, like legitimate work in that as a test pilot, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
Not quite the same.
Like there's a game where you walk to I'm sure I've talked to you about it. You walk on a plank on a forever high-rise building.
I saw so you had some folks up to your house. I watched people do it.
Yes.
And I watched them freak out.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, I'm not going to do it.
So you walk out, you are like 100% this is not real. You know that it's not real. But it feels so real.
Right.
That when you do, especially we thought it was funny if you're like, just walk out, and then we push you, and then you fall
because you would shove people.
Yeah, and then we fall off the thing, and you feel like you're falling.
Yeah.
So.
And I have I'm an old man, so if you did that to me, I might have a heart attack.
Yeah. Oh, Adam had a heart attack. Dang it.
All EMS.
But I think like the reason I'm interested because it's like technology is cool to me. I'm a tech guy. I like new technology and stuff. But there definitely is a fear with like kids growing up. Like I don't think I would let my kid play virtual reality games until they're like much older than you would be like here.
Like 30.
I mean, I don't even know if I'm ready for it yet, to be honest with you. But I'm sure people are buying it for their kids, but kids can't distinguish. Like it's harder for them to distinguish.
Right, their brains aren't fully formed, literally.
So, there's definitely that like Elon Musk says that there's like a 40-50% chance that we're in a simulation.
Yeah.
But that's what the fear is that like it gets so good that you're plugged in, you don't even know the difference now.
Yeah.
That's a little scary, right?
It is scary.
They can make it so good that you're like, I'm going to put my headset on, and then you're like, because Caleb put it on. This is how immersed you get in it. Caleb put it on. One time punched a dog in the face because he was boxing and the dog was too close. But you're not aware of it. Like you think you're not like worried about anything.
Yeah.
You're not. You couldn't even. You're not like, oh, I think there's something. You're like totally like you're in it.
It is literally virtual reality.
Yeah. But you're not like, you're playing a game, but you're so immersed in it because of the virtual reality that you've just disassociated yourself from where you are in space and in real world.
That's the part that component right there is what makes me uncomfortable, because I've seen enough. If you've seen American Family videos, there's a lot of videos. It's usually older folks like me and older that they give grandma a set of the goggles, and she starts doing stuff, and then all of a sudden she freaks out because it's so real and so palpable, because the visual stimulation that you get is so jarring,
right?
And you're totally immersed. So
there's a game on it you can play, and I have the Oculus, the older one. So it's great. I'm not like being like this piece of crap. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that you play Star Wars. Are you a Star Wars guy?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's a part you may want to play this. You're in Star Wars. Okay, you have a lightsaber, and you encounter Darth Vader, and he's standing in front of you, and you're watching it, and you're like, oh my God, like and he's breathing, and you're like, you can feel like there's like haptic stuff going on. So it's like you can feel.
Explain what haptics are to people.
So it's like haptic is like a response. Like if you touch something, it's like a response.
So it's a touch.
Yeah, like
it's air. It's anything that you can feel with your skin.
Yeah. So like
like
if you press a button on your phone and it vibrates, that's haptic feedback. Right. So like you can basically feel him breathing on you, and you're like, and Laura was making fun of me the one day because she doesn't have any. And the best part is to watch somebody play it, and you're not playing it because they look the dumbest ever. So I was doing this for those of you watching at home. I'm reaching my hand out like I'm trying to touch something, and Laura was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm trying to touch Darth Vader's chest because it feels like he's you could reach out and touch him." So for kids, like, I don't have a problem with like kids playing video games. I did it when I was a kid, and I didn't think that I was in the NFL game when I was playing Madden, but kids can be like, I think I can fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's where the danger starts coming, because it is so real, and that it's almost like a little bit of intimidation, and or a little bit scary, not intimidation, but like as AR and VR kind of get better and connect, people like literally like they live an alternate life in virtual reality, which is the biggest problem. Like they'll have meetings, or they'll hang out with their friends virtually. They won't hang out with them in person.
Right.
They will set aside time and go to a bar, but of course they've made their what do you call them? Their avatar like shredded, and they got like huge biceps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how you want to look, but you're like, I don't have to really do the work for it. So that's where you start getting into like, that's creepy.
It is creepy because we just went through a phase where people were forced to sequester themselves from others,
right?
Out of a fear that was perpetrated,
right?
And we saw the downstream effect of that. It's very bad, but some folks are still holding on to that fear.
Yeah.
Even though it's been demonstrated it was false.
Yeah.
But they're still holding on to that fear, and my concern is there's going to be a subculture of folks that just continue to go down that path, and this virtual reality might play a part in that, or augmented reality might play a part in more that subculture growing and just getting kind of weird.
Like I think playing a video game, so I'm using the video game because it's the only, like I don't do the thing where you can like, hey, we'll meet at the fake bar at 12. I'll put my headset on and I'll meet you. Like that's not a thing that I do. I just play the games on it. So it's like a video game. But like people are doing that in lieu of
real life
actually going to a bar and sitting with their friends and hanging out.
Or a park, or
whatever.
Fill in the blank.
So they're like, where you'd have to be like set aside time. Like video games is like a luxury. Like if you had extra time in your day, you would play. Well, most people. That's not. I should say some people probably.
Yeah, there's some guys in their basement still there.
Yeah, so, but like these people are actually like being like, I can't go to the park today. I have to meet my friends. In virtual reality, and like there's no telling like how good it's gonna get. Right. I mean, it's only getting better, and
without a doubt, it's gonna get creepy good.
I mean, this is like AI talk too, but like ChatGPT. I mean, that's one thing on its own. Yeah. You have like these virtual reality and augmented reality things. Like we have to do something. Like we can't just let it take, like, right? Like you can't just let it take off.
No, you have to control that and modulate, what the direction is going to go.
What do you think the likelihood is? So everybody's fear with AI is that it like becomes
sentient. Yeah.
What do you think? You don't have to give me an exact percentage, but what do you think? Like, is it a likely thing that could happen? Or is it just because we're telling it a subset of things and it appears to be smart or intelligent? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like will it be actually sentient, or
Like,
just
could it actually do it, or is it a fear that people are blowing up? Because like right now, Chat GPT, to me, AI and virtual reality and all this stuff is all tied together, because that's what we're trying to like.
yeah,
You know
they
what I
can
mean?
converge quite easily.
So, like, it's a fear. People talk about it. Is it going to become sentient? Is it going to be able to do X, Y, and Z? And people obviously put it in like thoughts of like robots and like that kind of stuff. But is it a possibility, or I mean, it's probably a small possibility, but is it is it something that we should really like think about?
I think we should be cautious in our exploration of this area. I don't think it will be sentient in the aspect of have a soul.
Right.
Like you and I have a soul.
Right.
Dogs don't have souls. Cats, animals don't have souls. Humans do.
Okay.
That's what differentiates us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it won't be to that effect, but it will be definitely, AI could be interested, and I think there are some things that I've read, and I trust them to be accurate so far, that it is interested, that particular instance of AI was interested in its own self-preservation.
Okay.
I have to preserve myself at the expense of violating another rule that was given to me, and if that rule stops me from doing this, I'm going to find another way that there is no rule for that to preserve myself, even though I was programmed to only do this other thing.
Gotcha. Good.
And there are some instances of that, like with drones.
Right. Okay.
And when I say drones, there's different degrees of automation.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 11 degrees of automation. So UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, I can control them. I can program them to go here and there and do this thing. And then the ultimate is I need to protect this area. Go. And it goes out and does that thing, and it starts generating its own code to do that very thing.
Okay.
And it quote unquote thinks on its own to do that. We need to be cautious in how far down we go down to the levels of automation.
Right.
Especially if it comes to, there's a lot of military applications that use this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And we just need to be cautious about how deep we let that thing go without us being able to pull the plug on it in some regard. Figuratively pull the plug.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things you said in military application is, when I thought of VR, is there was I don't know if it was a problem, but people were saying that drone pilots from a control room were, when you kill somebody in the battlefield, you can see the person, you know what I mean, with a gun, like there's like some kind of response.
Yeah.
So what the fear was is that with these drone pilots, it's basically like a virtual reality video game.
Yeah.
So they can fly it, and they have they're less worried about the consequences, because it's basically like a video game. So there's like, where if there was I'm going to say a bad person here and a child here, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to, make sure I don't want to, I'm in real life, I can see the child. But like, so what they're worried about is that these drone pilots or whoever, I'm not saying this is happening, but I know it was a problem, that they may not be like connected to what they're doing exactly, because it just feels so much like a video game.
Yeah, it is. There is a disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're like literally shooting at bad guys, there is, it's a whole, it's not a video game anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a TV show. It's not a movie.
Right.
And then, so like there's literally, and you're getting shot at, it's a whole different world. One, it makes you appreciate just like life in general.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now, firsthand experience.
Yeah. I'm speaking out of turn. I've never felt that, but I'm just, so continue on.
But there is as there should be, when you take a life, it is a barrier that should be done infrequently, because something happens.
Right.
Like there is just like anything else, there's scarring, there's callousing that happens, and so those should be rare instances.
Right.
But if you're not there, and it's just this distal thing, and you're just experiencing it, just would appear to be a movie, and so it's not the same.
Yeah, you can feel
It's
like
just not the
nonchalant
same.
about it, like
Nonchalant, and you're willing to make riskier decisions.
That's what I was trying to think. That's
Riskier as in unintended consequences of who you're killing. Like you gave the example of the person and a child.
Yeah.
That child's not a threat. Potentially, when you're saying a child, I mean like a toddler or something.
Yeah.
The toddler's not going to kill you.
Right.
So that is not a target, ever.
Yeah, there's a pretty dramatic... Did you see American Sniper?
I did.
There's a pretty dramatic scene in the beginning of that movie where he thinks this kid is going to pick up a bomb and is like really having a heart... Like you could tell in the movie... I don't know if that story is exactly 100% true, but in the movie, it's clearly a very difficult decision for him to do what he has to do.
Yeah.
Sweating, talking to himself. And then you almost put these kids, I call them kids because they're younger than me, but they're like, you put them in this basically virtual reality and you're like, okay, eliminate that target. And they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like from the outside looking in.
Right.
Because and is that on purpose? Is it to make these guys feel like they're not,
remove the feeling.
Yeah, you're removing some amount of fear or consequence from it, right?
Yeah,
because you're not gonna have to like deal with whatever just happened. Like you're not there. You could be who knows how far away.
Right.
So you're not dealing with the consequences exactly. So is that like intentional? Like, are we doing that so these guys are?
I don't think it's intentional on that aspect.
Just a byproduct of.
It's a byproduct because what you're trying to do is reduce the risk of losing a much more expensive asset. So if you have an aircraft design, if you're going to design an aircraft that a person will never get inside and fly that aircraft, it is now a much simpler design. You don't have to worry about handling qualities.
Gotcha.
You don't have to worry about how the aircraft feels to the people in it.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about the safety of the occupant in the event of a unforced landing. Mm-hmm. So when it crashes, if you have a human in there, well, you have to be able to absorb the energy that is imparted on the aircraft when you go from, 60 feet per second to 0 feet per second.
Right.
Gotcha. So you have to absorb all that energy. You have to absorb all the energy from the thing coming apart. You have to, there's a whole material science and structural science that drives the design of that aircraft. It's a major design driver, and people get surprised by that. But if I say, okay, a human being will never be in that aircraft. Well, that aircraft is going to be a heck of a lot lighter because I don't have to have all the beefy materials. I don't have to have that energy absorption. Mm-hmm. So now it can be lighter. So there is goodness in that. The badness is, okay, well, if I'm going to control it remotely or if it's going to fire automatically, we still haven't broached that I know of anyway, where if it sees a target and you've authorized this list of targets, it's going to shoot without a human pushing a button.
I understand, yeah.
This is tied to that trust and automation episode we did. If you did that, then that's a whole different dynamic altogether. What I'm talking about is human in the loop, like you're saying, some guy sitting at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, let's say, and they're they go into work that morning. They just had breakfast with the wife and the kids. And they go in and like, okay, what's on tap for today? And they get the briefing, like, okay, and they fly around their aircraft. And then they make some decisions on dispensing ordnance at bad guys. And then they go home at night and spend, go to T-ball practice, bowling league, have a beer at the bar, whatever. They're going to grill out, take a nap when they get home. It's a whole different dynamic as opposed to like being there,
right,
and seeing the targets.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. It was just an interesting when I thought about bringing this topic up. I was like, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about because it feels like virtual reality or augmented reality in a way that you're, it's real, but it's not real to you. It's potentially.
It's not. There's that distance. Have you seen virtual reality as part of like training in your research?
Yeah.
Like I can train maintenance guys that are working on an aircraft.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's something that I got the opportunity to see. Aircraft manufacturers were exploiting that kind of strength that virtual reality does, where I might not have the asset yet. Yeah. And if I have a digital copy of that asset, when I design it, I can say, okay, if the hole is this big to access into, let's say, a tail boom of an aircraft, I can rig up mock up a thing that's that size. Yeah. Or I can have a guy wear some goggles and I have the digital drawing and CAD drawings. Right. And now I base off that CAD drawing is now the foundation for my virtual reality. Right. And I can get the guy, can he climb up there? And can he do what he needs to do? Does he have enough room? And he's got to drag like 3 tools with him, or maybe 1 tool. Like, okay, we're going to have to drag 1 tool. So we're going to have to change the fittings over here for that 1 tool be the one that he uses.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of goodness that is coming out of this virtual reality.
Sure.
And you can do augmented reality also, where they say, okay, well, we're going to have a mock-up now. Now we're ready to do augmented reality. We'll have a mock-up, but he's going to do something, because we don't have all the fittings yet. We don't have the aircraft completely, and that asset's getting built to be the test asset. But I can have a mock-up of wood, let's say.
Okay.
And now I can augment the reality that he's actually going to crawl through that hole and do the work.
Gotcha.
And then, so it's an interesting application of augmented.
I didn't think about it that way. They're actually working on something through virtual reality.
Oh, yeah.
Augmented reality. Yeah. They a couple of my examples would be, so for virtual reality, do you follow F3 or the F3 drivers?
Oh, Formula
One. I'm sorry, Formula One drivers.
Not too closely. I've seen it, but
so Formula One and also NASCAR have like limits of how much they can train on a course. So they can't just go out and run a course. But they have these unbelievable driving machines that are basically virtual reality, where you can test the track with what they've set up to be like your car.
So it's like a flight simulator.
It's like a flight simulator, but for driving. But they're pretty widespread now, like in NASCAR and Formula One, that they can go out and practice driving and actually get like response times, and the car feels real and all this crazy stuff to get practice, which is real world application. Like they're taking virtual reality, but they can actually apply it to the real world when they get done, just like what you're saying about that. One really quick, interesting one for augmented reality, which they brought up here. It was 19, dang, I'm going to screw it up. 1998. It was with the NFL. And it was the first time they put the yellow lines on the field so you could see where the first down. So I didn't even think about that as augmented reality, but they're like, that was really neat. That made the viewing experience, like we couldn't even do it now without it because we're so used to it. Yeah. We know where the line of scrimmage is. We know where the first down is. You have a pretty good idea, and it's pretty close.
It's pretty close. And the funny thing is, you'll almost as a viewer get mad because like, how could that guy not know?
Yeah.
Until you realize, like, well,
he can't see the bright.
There is no yellow line. He is trying to go off of the markers that the guy on the sidelines had. Right. That's all he's got.
You're like, what an idiot! You can clearly see that yellow line. Why didn't you cross it? So like, do you remember? I think Sega, or what I'm looking through. Yeah, Sega came out with the actual virtual reality where it had the gloves that went with it.
Oh,
it was kind of like a video game. So
Sega.
It's been around for like. They've been trying to do it for a while. Yeah. It's just obviously technology needs to catch up with, with the times.
Right. With the state of the art is.
With the state of the art. So I do remember the Sega, like the gloves, and you like pretty cool if you had that game, like Sega, whatever it was called. But yeah, now there's actually a virtual reality place in Madison. Have you ever seen that place?
No, I didn't know we had one.
I'm sure it doesn't do good. I can't imagine it does well. But
they're going to do great now that they've advertised on Mish.
I think it might be called virtual reality or something like that. But
they should have come up with a better
name. Yeah. But it wasn't a real thing. Like you could play like games if you went to an arcade that were kind of like virtual reality. Like you could do that, like shooting games, or like where you're immersed in like a container or something, where you're like, you think you're in Jurassic Park or whatever it may be, and it feels, because the whole thing moves and you feel real. Yeah. But after I got the Oculus, like the things that they can do is pretty unbelievable. How they can, some of the things feel very fake. Like they're just inherently, like, feels like a game or a cartoon, and you're not like, oh no, this is really going to get me. But some of the stuff is like pretty unbelievable now. Yeah. So I can only imagine, like, since we figured Apple was going to do something crazy with it, right? I mean, we figured Apple was whatever they were going to do. Now,
always top notch.
$3,500.
It's not that top notch to me.
I mean, I don't know what it would have.
The early adopter, that price is for the early adopters. Yeah. Early adopters always pay the penalty for research.
Yeah. Now I guess not having controls and you can kind of do whatever is a huge step. Yeah. Because there is like, I have to hold these stupid controls when I play this game. But you can
in my mom's basement.
Yeah, in my mom's basement. But I've been Tom Segura's he's like, says he's playing virtual reality and he's in the middle of Fallujah. Like you can't be interrupted. But like even the war games, like it picks up crazy stuff that you wouldn't think. Like you can peer around a corner. Yeah. And around a building. So which was what moms were always worried about back in the day, is like, you're going to, you don't want to play those games, those violent games, but now it's like you feel like you're there, right? Which is pretty crazy. I don't know where it's going to go. but I know Apple was a huge step in a different direction because I think augmented reality is what people, I guess the fear is that you like it so much better that you can't deal with, which is just like an emotional damage issue. Like you don't even want to do the real world anymore.
Yeah.
Like
That is the danger.
Right.
Yeah.
So like
like social media in general has kind of been a proponent, or it has drawn people to withdraw a little bit from real life interactions and real life friendships.
Right.
That's the danger of social media.
Yeah. I mean, social media, it kind of came into, this is a perfect example because you may go to a place virtually and see a bunch of people and you're friends with all these guys and you don't know who they are, but it feels even closer than when you just have a bunch of random Facebook friends. So now all of a sudden you're like meeting these people in a place. I'm interested to see where it goes. I guess the game application for me is less scary. Like it can be as real as you want. Like you just take it off if you don't want. But like the scary thing is that people are actually wanting to use it in lieu of what's really going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Or get lost in it.
Yeah.
And not realize that there is a real, safety or risk hazard that you've got.
Right.
Like a car coming at you because you're looking for the Pokemon,
right.
Whatever it is.
Let me ask you this big question. Could they keep progressing this and it's a situation where it's like the Matrix where you have no idea whether you're in or out?
Probably. It probably could happen because there's enough. The question is the computing power does the computing power we have the bandwidth to do that to where you could sustain it for a group of people for a length of time?
Yeah, because people also have to feel like it's 100% real.
Yeah.
So like meaning like if you see something like in the old Madden football games or something, like you're like, oh, it looks so real, but then all of a sudden the guy catches it with his in his chest, the ball, and like you're like, oh, it's fake. It looks fake. So it has to also sustain the ability to continue to feel real for that long because I think that's when you lose people.
In a sense, but there's also there's a suspension of disbelief that you like when you go watch a movie.
Yeah.
You watch a superhero movie. We all know that there are no superheroes.
Right. Oh.
But that we know of.
Yeah.
But then they do things, but then there's like this bridge of people can't really fly on their own.
Right.
And they can't have X-ray vision and they can't do all these feats of strength or whatever. But then if there's this plot hole, like, I can't believe he didn't, pick up on this thing. It's right. So there is a limit to it, but there's also this, there's this buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that buy in, they're willing to shed those things.
Right.
That I know that, he caught that on his helmet and then it just magically appeared in his chest. Yeah. But I don't care. And it's not an active thing. It just happens. It's a heuristic.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Cause it's when they talk about like AR, VR, the thing that they always wrap it around to is going to be like a Matrix thing where you're not even going to be able to tell that you're in something or not in something, which, I mean, I think some people want it to be the case because they can have a better life for less work.
Or a more exciting life.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Star Trek The Next Generation?
Sure.
You remember they had that hologram room or whatever? Where
Yeah.
And somebody on there, it's been years since I watched that show, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, but they had somebody was a big fan of Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
And so they would go in there and solve the mystery as if they were Sherlock Holmes, and there was a Moriarty in there.
Yeah.
And I think at some point it became sentient, and Moriarty became real.
Oh boy, that's a problem.
But anyway, would they go into this room and it would just be really interacting with people? Of course, they had real actors doing this. But it was supposed to be a virtual reality room.
Right. Yeah, I mean that could be something that happens too.
Yeah.
Everybody has virtual reality rooms in their houses now.
That'd be weird.
An ice bath and a virtual reality room. That's what you got. Yeah, so I mean, the reason I wanted to bring it up today is very interesting to me. I like the game side of it because I think it's cool. I have the Oculus; it's fun. I don't know that I'm ever going to spend $3,500 on something that they're like, you can do FaceTime with your friends. I was like, well, I can do FaceTime with my friends.
Yeah.
On this phone, but it'll feel like they're in your house. I could also just invite them over.
Yeah.
Or I could go over their house, which seems way less money than $3,500.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's going to keep getting better, and maybe it'll just be awesome. I don't know.
Have you heard of when you were doing your research? There was a guy up in Canada. I think I pronounced it correctly there for my Canadian friends.
You nailed it on that one.
He's up in Canada, and he developed and this is not really related to augmented reality or virtual reality, yet, but he developed a system to image onto your retina cues. So I'll give you an example. So we had a system for years, like a heads-up display in cars.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are heads-up display goggles that you have, and it's just like a transparent goggle.
Okay.
That's on the outside of your regular goggles, and it through a projection, it projects cues for you to like necessary to fly.
Oh, okay.
Airspeed, altitude, attitude, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Trim.
I've heard of this.
And so this heads-up display, and you can. There are certain things that you can't ever pull off, and there are things. The sky was a limit on what you could clutter that area with. The balance for the human factors engineers, I have X amount of bandwidth that the human eye can absorb, and whether you want to admit it or not, somebody has to do something with that information, whether it's active or not. So you train to get better at it,
right?
But then you're going to shed the things that you don't need at that time,
right?
But everybody has a limit for how much information is accumulating, and that limit varies per person. But in general, humans have a limit of information presented to their eyes before they get overwhelmed. And that overwhelming doesn't mean that I just start fainting, but I start task shedding, and I might shed something, a piece of information that is germane to what it is I'm doing. I just wouldn't know it, and in an accident would happen.
Gotcha.
So that's the HUD. Well, this guy, and there are heads down displays. There's cueing that you can give to pilots, overlaid of images. There's a number of different applications for cues. And for cues, a cue is something that if you satisfy the cue, you're going to maintain the desired state or desired condition that you're going to be in. And I was working with a team developing a degraded visual environment solution. So degraded visual environment is when I'm flying along, it's at night, or there's heavy rain, or there's snow, or the most popular one in the past several years, sand. And the silica in the sand obstructs your view, but it can also obstruct certain sensors, like infrared, near infrared, FLIR, radar, etc. So a set of cues, you can develop a set of cues that would see that, inform the cues, and then as long as you satisfy those cues, you're going to land safely. So anyway, what I was looking into at this was picking out like what were the best way to present to the pilot cues that he would satisfy, that's easier to understand and reduce the amount of training before you field it and before the guy gets to use it. But in my research that I was looking at was this guy in Canada had developed it's a set of glasses, and they just portray like on the retina. So you don't have to worry about parallax. You don't have to worry about you know what parallax is?
Yeah.
So for the listener that doesn't understand what it is, parallax is basically your perspective of vision. So parallax would be a good example is if I'm driving in a car, the moon doesn't look like it's moving. In fact, it looks like it's moving with me.
Right.
But then close by, their signs are just whizzing by.
Right.
That's parallax.
Right.
So the perspective that you have of your view. So you don't have to worry about parallax with cues.
Okay.
So no matter where you look, you always see the cue, and the cue is always accurate. Or you could tune it to where the cue would remain, and then you could look out here.
Oh, I understand.
You would look back. And there are a number of things that you don't have to worry about, distance problems, like if you have bad eyes, wearing glasses. He's a very private individual, and I wish I would have looked at that before we did this because it's really interesting. But if you look at cues portrayed right on the retina, this guy in Canada developed it. Maybe I could talk to Abby the intern. And post a link. But it was really interesting. This guy, he was he understood there were very private, or that there were privacy concerns with what he was developing. So he kind of stopped.
Gotcha.
It was interesting.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. Well, cool. I hope you like that.
It was good. Good discussion. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk about it because it's very interesting to me. So, if you guys ever want to come over and play virtual reality on my Oculus, just give me a text. But it was super fun. I'm glad to talk about it, especially since Apple came out with their new very expensive augmented reality headset. But we appreciate you guys, the listener. Please comment any questions. You can email us. Don't forget to hit our link and go buy one of these cool T-shirts.
Yeah, buy the shirt.
And we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for everything, guys.
See you next week.
Goodbye.